To our speakers and distinguished guests from the government, the diplomatic community, the academe, think tanks, the media, and also civil society. So once again, I am Joyce Reyes, and I am your host for this afternoon. And welcome again to the ninth year of the Arbitral Victory, defending the rules-based order through reinforced defense capabilities and partnerships. So I hope you had a sumptuous lunch, and as we have more engaging discussions to fill the rest of the day. But before we proceed to our esteemed speakers for this afternoon, we are fortunate to get a sneak peek into the award-winning documentary, as mentioned by Professor Manhit this morning, entitled Food Delivery, Fresh from the West Philippines Sea. Now, this documentary recently won the Tides of Change Award at the prestigious New Zealand International Documentary Film Festival, Doc Edge. Let's give them a round of applause, please. Now, this documentary was produced by Voyage Studios and directed by Baby Ruth Villarama. And we are very, very privileged because one of the producers is here with us today. Let us all welcome Mr. Chuck Gutierrez, the award-winning producer, and of course, the award-winning director, Miss Baby Ruth Villarama, is also with us today. Thank you very much for joining us. So this documentary follows the rising tensions in the West Philippine Sea, where Filipino fishermen, Coast Guard, and Navy personnel risk their lives to defend our waters. It features Filipino fisherfolk's harrowing encounter with the Chiina Coast Guard, capturing rare frontline access, quiet heroism, and a powerful alliance in the fight for sovereignty. So, ladies and gentlemen, let us all watch the preview in our LED screen. All right, that was very interesting, and we definitely want to see more of that. I think at this point, we will be hearing from the director of the documentary. So, ladies and gentlemen, let us all welcome Director Baby Ruth Villarama.
God. We're usually just happy doing our work behind the scene, but because of what's been happening, here I am. Good afternoon to all of you, our esteemed ambassadors, members of the armed forces, educators, lawmakers, and defenders of the nation. It is an honor for me to be here with you today. And 9 years ago, the arbitrary ruling affirmed what we Filipinos have always known, not just in law, but in our hearts. The West Philippine Sea is ours. As storytellers, we did not begin this journey with answers. We began with questions. Why do fishermen keep returning to these contested waters? What drives our Coast Guard and soldiers to stay calm under pressure? And what goes through their minds as they prepare to deliver food for a mission? In making food delivery film, we found the answer. Because for them, the sea is not just a geopolitical issue. It is not a headline, it is home. And home is always worth defending. On June 30, our film had its world premiere in New Zealand. It was met with tears of The Chinese consulate immediately tried to block the screening. We sent formal letters, they lobbied for its cancellation. But the festival thankfully said no. They stood for the film and for the truth. That moment reminded us that the fight for the West Philippine Sea isn't only fought on the water, it's also fought through education, braver principled diplomacy, and storytelling. So to all of you here, thank you for the work that you're already doing. This film is a timestamp of all your contributions. But we ask for your help once more. Help us bring food delivery to more cinemas, to classrooms, to communities, to policy spaces. Because if our people cannot fish freely, if their stories are not told, even our most historic victories can be forgotten. But if we continue to speak, to scream, and to stand together, no pressure, no propaganda, no foreign power can erase what is rightfully ours. And we're proud to announce today that Food Delivery will finally have its Philippine premiere on July 27, 7 p.m. at Cinema 7, Rockwell Power Plant Cinema. It's just a one-night only screening. We don't know if it will happen again, and we don't know if similar external pressures will resurface. But we know this: the story has to come home. And we invite you, not just as officials, not just as leaders, but as people who believe in the quiet power of standing your ground. Because this isn't just a Filipino story. It is a story of every small nation daring to be heard, of every teacher who still chooses to teach history, of every diplomat who chooses principle over pressure, of every soldier who guards the invisible lines of peace, and yes, of every storyteller who refuses to stay silent. Thank you, and may the waves carry our courage farther than fear ever could. Mabuhay po kayong lahat at mabuhay ang tunay na malayang Pilipinas. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you very much, Direct Baby Ruth Villarama, and also to the executive producer, Mr. Chuck Gutierrez. Once again, let's give them another round of applause, please. Alright. Oh, before we proceed to our next part, let's have a quick photo opportunity. May we invite again Direct Baby Ruth and Mr. Gutierrez, please, to have a quick photo opportunity with Strat-Based Institute President, Professor Manhit. So we in StratBase, we do a lot of these conferences primarily to educate, to spread awareness, for information dissemination. And I believe that this documentary is really one of the best way to spread information and awareness about what's happening in this part of our country. And I hope that we can all support this very good endeavor that Ms. Baby Ruth and Mr. Chuck have started. So once again, congratulations and thank you for joining us this afternoon. All right. At this point, it is my pleasure to introduce a special speaker for this afternoon. We are honored to be joined by the United States Pacific Fleet, one of the major component commands of the U.S. Navy, responsible for naval operations across the Indo-Pacific region and recognized as the world's largest fleet command. To share his insights with us today, please welcome the commander of the U.S. Pacific Fleet, Admiral Stephen Kaler. Let's give him a round of applause.
Well, hello everyone. Good afternoon. How is everybody doing today after lunch? I have the opportunity to address you with a full stomach, but thank you very much for the opportunity today, specifically to StratBase writ large. Thank you, Professor Monette. Thank you so much for inviting me and have this opportunity to share my perspective as the U.S. Pacific Fleet Commander. Truly honored as I've had this opportunity to meet some of you to be part of this distinguished group. So on behalf of the Pacific Fleet, it's an honor to be here, and I thought what a great opportunity to talk to you a little bit as we celebrate this milestone anniversary of the arbitral ruling. I thought I would share just two major trends that I see in the South China Sea, the West Philippines Sea. First, there's a growing recognition that what happens in the West Philippines Sea is part of a larger regional picture. We can see that China's unlawful claims to control over the entire South China Sea are linked to its broader push for hegemony in the region. Just as China has increased its deployments and aggressive tactics in the West Philippines Sea, it has intensified its rehearsals for invasion and blockade of Taiwan. For the U.S. Pacific Fleet, our mission is to deter aggression across the Indo-Pacific, together with our allies and partners, and to prevail in combat if necessary. That mission of deterrence applies region-wide, including the West Philippines Sea and Taiwan. A conflict or crisis in either place would endanger the interest of countries across the region who rely on the flow of maritime commerce and put their prosperity at risk. Second, deterrence, despite its challenges, in my opinion, is holding the line in the West Philippines Sea. In the last several years, China has deployed a growing number of vessels to harass and coerce Southeast Asian states in their own waters. It has used artificial island bases. It has built as springboards for those actions. China's tactics have also grown steadily and more aggressive, with rammings, water cannons, lasers, and sometimes worse. A year ago, we saw that violence on video at the Second Thomas Shoal, where China Coast Guard used axes and blades to injure a Philippine sailor conducting resupply. But despite these bully tactics, it's clear at this 9th anniversary of this arbitral ruling that China has failed to intimidate Southeast Asian claimants into surrendering their sovereign rights. In fact, we've seen a laudable resilience and resolve to defend their maritime rights in the face of mounting pressure. Nearly all Southeast Asian littoral states are now prioritizing stronger maritime capabilities. Malaysia, Indonesia, and Vietnam have all sustained or expanded their offshore oil and gas work in their South China Sea EEZs. Perhaps the most compelling example, however, is in the Philippines, which has shown in the face of heavy pressure, firm and strong defending of your sovereign rights with dignity and strength. It continues to sustain its garrison of brave Marines at 2nd Thomas Shoal, as an example. The AFP and the Philippine Coast Guard are modernizing their capabilities and deploying proactively to defend their maritime rights. By shining a media light on China's intimidation tactics at sea, the Philippines has shown public exposure can be a vital tool to blunt coercion. Its expansion of defense partners has also bolstered defenses. From expanding reciprocal access agreements to inviting a growing range of maritime partners for cooperative patrols and exercises in the West Philippine Sea. The U.S. Navy is proud to be among those partners. Supplementing this Southeast Asian resilience, the actions of the United States, I would argue, have had a real deterrent effect as well. The U.S. and the U.S. Pacific Fleet, in particular, happens to be biased, but in particular, is privileged to be a friend, partner, or ally with nearly every nation bordering the South China Sea. For our Department of Defense and our Navy, the Indo-Pacific is the priority theater. That is reflected in the strength of our Pacific Fleet. Over 200 ships, 1,300 aircraft, and 150,000 personnel. That's about 60% of the U.S. Navy and includes our most advanced capabilities. On any given day, around 1/3 of our units are deployed. Another 1/3 are combat ready. Today, there are 3 Pacific Fleet carrier strike groups deployed, with more preparing for deployment as we speak. The USS George Washington Carrier Strike Group just patrolled the Philippines Sea and finished its visit to Manila. The USS America Amphibious Readiness Group, which is based in Japan, is near Australia right now for the major exercise Talisman Sabre. On top of that, we have numerous forward deployed destroyers, littoral combat ships, submarines, and aircraft that continue to patrol the region. In addition, this strong contribution of allies and partners, many which are represented here today, has had a powerful cumulative effect on strengthening deterrence. While China has ignored the arbitral ruling, the rest of the world has not. The ruling's rejection of China's claim and its endorsement of the Philippines EEZ has become the widely accepted view. It is explicitly endorsed by a growing number of states, especially those who consistently champion freedom of the seas. One of the clearest signs of ally and partner solidarity is the robust series of maritime joint combined exercises across the region. Those include Balakatan, right here in the Philippines. With credit to our Philippine hosts, Balakatan 2025 was the largest ever, with forces from the Philippines, United States, Australia, Japan for the first time, and 16 other nations observing. Multilateral exercises like Balakatan are a reminder that deterrence is a team sport. We are all in need to do our part, and we must continue to build deterrence for the challenges ahead. So what can we expect in the South China Sea, the West Philippine Sea in this coming year? First, we can expect China to continue to try to divide and pressurize the Philippines and other Southeast Asian countries over the South China Sea. This may come in various forms. It could be behind-the-scenes coercion to stay silent when China's ships harass oil and gas or fisheries in other countries' EEZs. It could mean China offering inducements to buy silence or to look the other way as their Coast Guard or maritime militia assert their control. It might mean sweet words such as, "Let's jointly develop your resources." that are actually an invitation to arrangements that risk implicit recognition of Beijing's ownership. Claimant states would be wise to compare notes and stay vigilant to these tactics. That will help preserve unfettered access to their sovereign rights and jurisdictions over resources in their EEZs. Second, I think we need to continue or improve our collective ability to deter aggression. We should continue to train and exercise together in meaningful ways. The U.S. Pacific Fleet is always ready to work with you to strengthen deterrence and show no individual country can be pushed around. As the Secretary of Defense said most recently at the Shangri-La Dialogue, no one should doubt America's commitment to the Indo-Pacific, allies, and its partners. For proof of that commitment, look no further than the ironclad alliance between the Philippines and the United States. The Philippines is America's oldest security treaty ally in the Indo-Pacific since 1951, and our alliance grows stronger than ever. Today we operate with our Philippine allies as equals. Our alliance has gained dramatic momentum and evolved significantly in the last few years. Together, we are increasing infrastructure investments at agreed sites in the Philippines to support combined training, exercises, interoperability, and disaster response. We're bringing advanced capabilities and training to the Philippines and deepening our collaboration on defense industry and cyber defense, as announced most recently by Secretary Hegseth and Secretary Teodoro in March. This momentum in our alliance is hugely encouraging, and the cause is enduring. That cause is freedom. Freedom to safeguard national sovereignty and pursue your people's prosperity without coercion or threat of force. Earlier today, I paid my respects at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier at the National Heroes Cemetery. It stands not far from the Manila American Cemetery, where many Americans fallen are laid to rest. It reminded me not only of the shared sacrifice of allies, but of how vital it is to show our resolve to uphold your rights, whether your nation is large or small. For my part, and our part in the U.S. Pacific Fleet, we will continue to stand with the Philippines and our other allies to uphold sovereignty and the freedoms we all hold dear. I truly appreciate and thank everyone for allowing me to be here today, express a couple of my views, and I think this time together has been very important. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you. Okay.
All right. I'm requesting the Admiral to stay on stage for a quick photo opportunity with Strat-Based President Professor Manhit and Ambassador Mary Kay Carlson. Thank you for joining us. Once again, another round of applause, please, for Admiral Stephen Kaler. Thank you very much for joining us this morning, sir, and thank you very much for that very insightful and inspiring speech. And at this point, we will now proceed to our first panel for this afternoon, which will look into strengthening the Philippines' defense posture. We will explore the strategic imperatives of enhancing the Philippines' defense capabilities amid evolving regional security dynamics. This panel will highlight the urgency of adopting a comprehensive, multi-domain external defense strategy from maritime to air to effectively asserting and safeguarding our sovereign rights. And to begin this afternoon's discussion, we are joined by the spokesperson of the Armed Forces of the Philippines to share with us how joint military exercises enhance interoperability. Let us give a warm round of applause for Colonel Francel Margaret Taborlupa.
Magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. It's very difficult to open the floor for an after lunch talk. But let me begin. Intimidation can erase that truth. 9 years ago, the ruling came down and the world saw lines drawn across a map. But for those of us in uniform, it was never just about coordinates. It was a call, a commitment, a contract with every Filipino. You will never be left undefended. Since then, we've watched the tides shift, not just in water, but in posture, in tone, and in intent. So, this isn't a celebration. This is a report from the trenches, from the radars, from the cockpits, the forward bases, where the men and women of the Armed Forces of the Philippines have stood watch and stood ready. Not too long ago, most of our fights were in the shadows, internal threats, insurgencies. But the threatscape has changed, and so did we. Today, our units don't just track movements in the mountains, they monitor incursions in the open sea. Our operators now defend not just visible ground, but digital terrain as well. And the quiet hum of a drone has become just as familiar as the roar of a helicopter. This isn't theory, this is a necessity. We didn't merely pivot, we transformed, because the next threat won't send a warning, and we intend to meet it standing up, not catching up. Proactive rather than reactive. When we speak of the Indo-Pacific, we speak of a single theater. What unfolds in the East China Sea doesn't stay there. It rolls south, sometimes even literally. Into our waters, our airspace, our stability. That's why we have embraced the one theater concept, one interconnected sea, one shared reality. One line of preparation that stretches across the arch of alliances and geography. We no longer train for isolated events. We prepare for a chain reaction. And we are strengthening every single link. Because when the first ripple hits, we won't be scrambling. We'll already be in position. For effectivity and synchronization internally and effectively defending independently. We hold exercise Dagat Pa, Dagat, Langit at Lupa. It's sea, air, and land. We grow the habit of joint
Depending on the results of the test in this laboratory will impact into other maritime domains in North America, in Europe, and in other parts around the world. Our nation is a maritime nation, archipelagic country. We depend on the seas as our lifeblood for trade, for commerce, for prosperity. The security of our seas is crucial in our national defense posture.
Yung pinost mo nung nakarang araw, naka 1,000.
When the current administration came into power in 2022, I did not expect personally
In 2
that
days,
there would be a policy statement that would shift the orientation of the armed forces from internal security to external defense. When the Commander-in-Chief mentioned not 1 square inch during his 2022 State of the Nation address, it was followed up in 2023, January, when during his visit to the Visayas Command, he mentioned, the armed forces will now have a new mission. we will be shifting from internal security orientation towards external defense. This was further amplified by the Secretary of National Defense in 2024, February, when he mentioned during his visit to the Batanes Group of Islands that the armed forces will be implementing a comprehensive archipelagic defense concept. From there, we have seen the armed forces take on the bigger role of defense and security, which is oriented outwards, and playing a supporting role to other law enforcement partners when it comes to the internal security picture. Horizon 3 of the modernization program has numerous capabilities for the Navy, the Air Force, the Army, and Joint Headquarters. This covers a broad range of capabilities, but modernization is more than just capabilities. It is first and foremost the will of the people, the national leadership, military capability, and partners and allies. Part of this for the Philippine Navy is looking at how will we be structured to be able to implement the comprehensive archipelagic defense concept. Our defense posture is to show that the Philippines is like a porcupine that adopts aposematism, or showing any potential adversary, I am small, I'm slow, I don't have much meat. You could easily kill me for food, but will I be worth the cost? The same approach has driven the Philippine Navy to develop its capability within the bounds of the Constitution, that we despise war as an instrument of national policy, but we are prepared to secure and defend all the way up to the exclusive economic zone, the continental shelf, and even the extended continental shelf. Developments across the capabilities of maritime domain awareness, maritime strike, cross-domain fighting, asymmetric warfare, and support and sustainment have now been deliberated upon and submitted to higher headquarters for consideration and subsequent approval. Central to this is ensuring that our choke points that provide access from the South China Sea to the bigger Pacific expanse will be within the control of the Philippines, and that we will be interoperable with our partners and allies. For 2023, we have had 3 MCAs, Maritime Cooperative Activities. 2024, we had 10. This year, within 6 months, we have had 10, with more coming. And I'm glad to say that your Philippine Navy has been able to plug and play with modern navies, some of which are represented here in this room. The choke points are critical when it comes to the defense and security of the country. They are considered as the maritime mobility corridors, providing east-to-west passage and vice versa. They are critical to national defense and a contributor to regional peace and stability. Likewise, as mentioned by the Secretary of National Defense about the one theater concept, our current unified command system is looking at defense and security from the perspective of the land. The one theater concept would give us a broader battle space, looking at defense and security from the perspective of the maritime domain. This would allow us to simplify the chain of command and the allocation of resources. The same concept also is being applied by the Philippine Air Force, because the air up there knows no boundaries. This concept has been already in the Philippine Navy's active archipelagic defense strategy of 2012. In closing, allow me to say that a stronger Philippine Navy will protect our territory, defend our sovereignty and sovereign rights. It will allow us access to our maritime entitlements, which every Filipino has the right to. It will contribute to national development, serve as a strong deterrent to any potential adversary, and contribute to regional peace and stability. Maraming salamat. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Admiral Roy Trinidad. Our next speaker will tackle how the AFP's Aerial Warfare Service Branch is creating an integrated air and missile defense against various aerial threats. May we now call on the commander of the Philippine Air Force's Air Defense Command, Major General Fabian Pedregosa.
Your Excellencies, distinguished visitors, members of the government, members of the Armed Forces of the Philippines and the Philippine Coast Guard, representatives of civil society, esteemed colleagues from the media, members of the academe, to Professor Dindo Manhit and the whole SAT-based family, and my fellow Filipinos. Good afternoon. Today we mark the 9th anniversary of the landmark Arbitral Award on the South China Sea, a milestone that continues to affirm not just our maritime entitlements, but the primacy of international law over unilateral and no-basis assertion. In 2016, the Philippines stood before the world and asked, can a small nation seek justice through the law, and will the world listen?
Antonio Carpio, my fellow patriots and brave Filipinos celebrating the 9th anniversary of the Arbitral Award, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, a pleasant afternoon to everyone. Before I start, I would like to seek for your indulgence because I was not able to coordinate with AFP personnel in coming up with their presentation slides. So I just have pure text and manuscript for my speech. It is with great honor and profound pleasure that I stand before you as we come together to celebrate the 9th anniversary of the Arbitral Award. I would like to begin by expressing my heartfelt appreciation to the Strat-based Institute for organizing this momentous occasion, which serves as a platform for us to reflect on and commemorate this significant milestone in our nation's history. As we gather in this esteemed activity, it is necessary for us to acknowledge the remarkable efforts of the Philippine Coast Guard in enhancing its capabilities to protect and secure our maritime jurisdiction. However, I think it is essential for us to clarify the scope of the Coast Guard's responsibilities. It is vital for us to understand that the Philippine Coast Guard is not positioned to take the lead in addressing external threats to our sovereignty. Rather, this critical role firmly resides with the Philippine Navy as an integral component of the armed forces of the Philippines. I have reiterated this point in numerous occasions in past discussions, and I wish to underscore it once more today. The Philippine Navy will always remain to have the constitutional mandate to defend our maritime jurisdiction. To initiate our discourse, we must clearly delineate the role of the Philippine Coast Guard in the context of safeguarding Philippine waters. Our primary focus is centered around constabulary duties, particularly within the framework of maritime governance. When we speak of maritime governance, we are referring to the essential task of ensuring safety at sea, protecting the marine environment, and enforcing myriad of maritime laws that govern our waters. With this foundational understanding in place, it becomes clear that our efforts in capability building and modernization must not be narrowly focused solely on the presence in the West Philippine Sea. While that particular aspect is undoubtedly of great significance, we must also devote considerable attention to other equally vital mandates, such as maritime safety and marine environmental protection. The evolution of the Philippine Coast Guard capabilities has been an ongoing journey since 2013, when then President Noynoy Aquino sought the support of the Japanese government to fund the acquisition of the 10.4-meter multi-role response vessels, followed by the 2 additional 97-meter vessels. All of these newly constructed ships were delivered during the presidency of President Rodrigo Duterte. Among the assets that were initiated by President Noynoy Aquino and subsequently received during his successor's term are the 4 24-meter fast patrol boats and the Coast Guard's first 83-meter offshore patrol vessel, which was financed by the French government. Furthermore, during the Duterte administration, the Coast Guard has successfully acquired 2 Airbus H-145 helicopters and a Cessna Grand Caravan multipurpose single-engine aircraft to bolster our operational capabilities. At present, these Coast Guard limited assets are actively deployed across various regions of the Philippine archipelago, undertaking critical missions that include search and rescue operations, oil spill prevention, and sovereignty patrols, among other essential tasks. It is evident that our current assets, both aerial and maritime, are insufficient to adequately sustain our efforts in fulfilling our mandates that span the length of our nation's coastline from Batanes to Tawi-Tawi. However, it is crucial to note that our challenges regarding equipment, particularly in our coastal communities, are somewhat alleviated by the professionalism and technical competencies of our personnel. The significant contribution of the former president in facilitating a rapid increase in the workforce back in 2016 must be recognized. At that time, the Coast Guard was only staffed by a meager 8,990 personnel. Thanks to the Coast Guard recruitment plan that I personally wrote way back in 2017, we were able to effectively justify the necessity for a substantial increase, aiming for a personnel to kilometer ratio. Given that our coastline measures an impressive total of 37,869, the Philippine Coast Guard then faces a staggering deficit of nearly 28,000. At present, I am proud to announce that the Coast Guard now has a personnel strength of more than 35,000 strong. Our personnel have undergone rigorous development through regular training sessions at the U.S. Coast Guard facilities in the United States, as well as through training programs sponsored by JICA with the Japanese Coast Guard. Despite the fiscal challenges, the current leadership of the Philippine Coast Guard under Admiral Ron Hilgavan remains committed to enhancing our assets. This endeavor is strongly supported by the Chief Executive and both houses of Congress, who have shown their backing for our modernization efforts for the Coast Guard. Currently, in the pipeline is the acquisition of 5 additional 97-meter vessels from Japan, alongside the procurement of 40 35-meter multipurpose fast response boats with support from France. Of these, 20 will be constructed in France, while the remaining 20 will be built right here in the Philippines. The primary goal is to facilitate technology transfer and ultimately bolster our local shipbuilding industry. In terms of our government funding, the Philippine Coast Guard has also set ambitious plans aimed at significantly enhancing our operational capabilities. One of the key initiatives is the acquisition of several 60-meter class multi-role response vessels, which are designed to provide versatile support for our various maritime missions. In addition to these vessels, we are also planning to procure 2 medium endurance helicopters and 2 trainer helicopters, which will greatly enhance the aerial surveillance and operational readiness. This year, we have also programmed the establishment of a sophisticated satellite data communication system. This system is intended to be installed at Coast Guard shore stations and on at least 12 of our Coast Guard vessels. Furthermore, in terms of weapon system, the Coast Guard has scheduled the installation of a 30mm remote-controlled stabilized naval gun system on our 97-meter vessels. This installation is a significant step forward as it will provide our vessels with enhanced firepower to ensure a robust maritime presence. Lastly, I firmly believe that among all the capability development initiatives currently being championed by our leadership, the enhancement of port facilities stand out as the most critical. In the next coming years, we anticipate that our fleet will expand by over 200%, which presents a significant challenge. We currently lack sufficient berthing space for our vessels. This situation can be likened of having numerous cars without any available parking spaces. However, it is essential to recognize that these acquisitions should not be viewed as merely ordinary vehicles. Given that our budgetary constraints, we consider these vessels to be comparable to high-end luxury sports cars. Each one represents a substantial investment in a vital asset for our maritime operation that we cannot even accommodate for proper berthing spaces. While we have received support from both the US government and the Japanese government for the development of the Coast Guard Vessel Support Facility in Buliluyan, Palawan, and the Vessel Support Facility in Subic Bay area, it is crucial that our national government also acknowledges the significance of our vessel as a multi-billion peso investment. Although it is often said that we must put where our mouth is, I would argue that the value of the Coast Guard vessels far exceeds any potential revenue from the port dues if only limited berthing space is allocated by the Philippine Ports Authority. Ensuring proper support of our fleet is not just an investment in infrastructure, it is an investment for national security. In conclusion, I want to affirm that the Philippine Coast Guard remains to have an unwavering commitment that despite our limited resources, our dedication to defending what is rightfully ours remains strong. We will continue to seek innovative ways to highlight China's blatant violations of international law, bullying tactics, and aggressive actions before the international community. We refuse to let the Chinese intimidation tactics succeed because of our silence. As a staunch advocate of international law, which serves as equalizer among nations, we recognize that the People's Republic of China will not be held accountable if we remain silent in the face of such aggression. With this conviction, the Philippine Coast Guard, under the leadership of Admiral Gaban, will use its modest resources to ensure that our voices are heard and that the violators of the international law and bully countries like China will be held accountable. Maraming salamat po at mabuhay ang bagong Pilipinas.
Thank you very much, Commodore J. Tariela. Very, very strong statements from our speakers for this panel. And I'm sure that many of you have questions you wish to ask from our speakers. So at this point, we will now proceed to our open forum. So may we call back on stage our panelists, please. Colonel Faisal Tabordupa, Admiral Roy Trinidad, General Fanny Pedregosa, and also Commodore J. Tariela. And this panel will be moderated by Mr. Don McLean Gill, non-resident fellow of the Strat-Based Institute and also a lecturer at the De La Salle University's Department of International Studies.